You can live your whole life and never meet your true self. The greatest defeat is not losing a battle, but never entering it. People work, earn, save, but never discover the most important thing, their purpose. In this video, I will tell you how to find the path that will make your life a legend. And at the end, I'll give you a practical key from which true transformation begins. In the meantime, think about this. What does your life smell like, victory or compromise? Have you ever caught yourself thinking like maybe I'm just living someone else's life, not yours, not chosen, just convenient, acceptable? The kind society, parents, your boss approve of everyone but you. A paradox, isn't it? In a world where freedom has become a commodity, the hardest thing is to be yourself. Because being yourself means taking responsibility for your own story and writing it in a way that someday someone will say, that was a person, he lived his legend. But most people never dare to do it. Once I was one of them, 25 years old, bankrupt, a small child at home, $2 in my pocket, and not a single legend in my mind. I wasn't a hero, I was a statistic. Until one man told me a phrase that later changed my life. If you want more, become more. That was Errol Schoaf, my mentor, a man who didn't just sell products, he sold ideas. And it was those ideas that saved me. He didn't give me money, he gave me a philosophy. And that philosophy began with a simple thought. Life doesn't get better by chance, it gets better by change, and change begins within. People often ask me, Jim, how do I find my calling? I always respond with a question, who have you become in the last 90 days? Because the path to your personal legend isn't something mystical, not a sign from the heavens, not a midnight revelation. It's step by step transforming yourself into the person destined to leave a mark. I don't have a formula for success, but I have a story, and I have principles that work. And the first of them is stop playing small. Once I heard, there is no passion to be found in settling for a life that is less than the one you are capable of living. That was Nelson Mandela, and I'll repeat it. There's no point in living below your potential. The problem is, most of us were taught to play supporting roles. We were told, be realistic, don't stand out, have a backup plan. But let me ask, when was the last time you saw a happy person playing it safe? I was taught that you need something to fall back on. But I always said, I don't want to fall back, I want to fall forward, because at least that way I'll see where I'm going. And that's the difference between those who live their legend and those who live a repeat. Some leap into the new, others cling to the familiar, some seek meaning, others safety. But there's one question that puts everything in perspective. What if I live the next 10 years the same as the last? If the answer doesn't inspire you, it's time to take the wheel back. Remember the parable about the man searching for gold, digging and digging, but stopped 3 feet from the vein? That's how many people stop on the path to their legend. They don't see results fast enough and give up. But there's a law. The world opens to the one who works on themselves, not just on tasks. That's why I learned to work more on myself than on my job. Because if you develop your skills, your vision, your character, you will inevitably begin to attract new opportunities. And that's where your real legend begins. You won't find your path by looking at others. You won't find your calling in friends' advice or in the news feed. You'll find it when you sit down one-on-one with yourself. When you open a journal and for the first time honestly write, here's who I am, here's who I want to become, and here's what I'm willing to do for it. That's why I always said, don't trust your memory, keep a journal. Because on the path to your true self, your memory is unreliable. But the words you leave on paper are the seeds of your legend. The great Seneca said, if a man does not know to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. And so the first thing you need to do is not seek money, not a business, not life hacks, but ask yourself, where am I going? And if the answer is silence, here's the good news, that silence is a blank page. And that's where the legend begins. But be ready, it won't be easy. You'll be criticized, misunderstood, doubted, and the most painful part sometimes, your own thoughts will become your biggest enemy. They'll whisper, who are you to? But it is in that very moment that a hero is born. Because legend is not about not feeling fear. It's about not letting fear dictate your decisions. Today I want to invite you on a journey, not to something external, but to your true self. Because inside each of us is a story yet untold, a path yet untraveled, a mission waiting to be fulfilled. And if you don't fulfill it, who will? If not now, then when? I don't promise it'll be easy, but I promise, if you make it to the end, it will be a life worth remembering. So how do you find your unique purpose? Here's where to start. Don't look for yourself in the mirror of others. You are not a reflection of trends, fashion, or someone else's approval. You are the beginning of your own line. Your story doesn't need to resemble anyone else's. And the very first thing you need to do is stop comparing. Not to social media stars, not to the neighbor who bought a new car, not to the colleague who just got a promotion. Your calling isn't in their hands. It's deeper and much closer than it seems. I remember the day I stood by the window in a small apartment in Beverly Hills. Yes, in Beverly Hills, but not the part where they shoot movies. I was in debt, had 2 kids, and was watching expensive cars pass by on the street. And I thought, that's not for me. But deep inside, something stirred. Why not? Who said you don't have the right? In that moment, for the first time, I thought, what if my purpose isn't outside but inside? Not in what I do, but in who I can become. Friend, let me ask you, who could you become? If you took away fear, doubt, criticism, if you forgot what you were told in school, at your first jobs, in your weakest moments, what would be left? Because it's in that quiet that your calling begins to speak. And it doesn't shout, it whispers. It doesn't ask you to become someone else. It asks you to stop hiding who you already are. Some of you might be working in an office but dream of writing. Some have spent their lives in sales but want to teach. Some have walked the same path for 30 years but can't sleep at night because it doesn't feel right. And I'm here to say, you're not too late. Your purpose has no expiration date, but it has one essential ingredient, your determination to seek it. How to begin? Let's start simple. I once said, don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. Don't wish for less problems, wish for more skills. That's the key. Purpose doesn't reveal itself when the world softens. It reveals itself when you strengthen. And it's in the process of growth, as you develop skills and overcome inner barriers, that you suddenly realize, this is it. This is what I was born for. Each of us has what I call the seed of greatness. But the problem is we wait for perfect soil, the perfect moment. But as I often said, if you wait, you'll wait forever. Your chance lies in movement, in action, in the attempt. Because purpose doesn't reveal itself to the one who sits, it comes to the one who walks, even without knowing the direction, but with the intention to grow. Now let me ask you a few questions. Answer them honestly, just to yourself. What won't let you rest? What would you do even without being paid? When was the last time you felt that everything was in its right place? What makes you lose track of time? And most importantly, what will die with you if you don't bring it into the world? Yes, it sounds serious, but we're talking about your legend, and it isn't built on the surface, it grows from depth. You see, at 25, I had only one advantage, the willingness to learn. I met a man who told me, Jim, work more on yourself than on your job. And that's when my personal legend began. I wasn't looking for answers in the world. I was searching in books, in my journal, in the mirror. And day by day, I became someone who doesn't just have a purpose, but lives it. And here's another secret. You won't find purpose in your head. You'll find it in action. Many people think they need to figure it all out first. But I say take the first step, and understanding will come along the way. It's like driving at night with your headlights on. You don't see the whole road, but you see the first 20 meters. And that's enough to move forward. I had a student who worked his whole life as an engineer, dedicated, diligent, but constantly felt something was off. When he started journaling, after a few months he discovered the greatest satisfaction didn't come from blueprints, but from explaining them to junior colleagues. A year later, he became a technical thinking coach. Now he travels the country teaching. He didn't change everything. He simply allowed himself to be who he already was. So how do you find your calling? Here's my answer. Through honesty, through action, through growth, and through observing what resonates within. Because calling isn't an external signal. It's an inner tremor that says, this is yours. But to hear it, you need to quiet the noise and start living, not for impressions, but for essence. And most importantly, don't wait for permission. Because most of the time we're waiting for someone to bless us. But let me tell you plainly, you already have the right. You were born with it. Legends don't ask for permission. They choose and go. And you know what? This is just the beginning. Because finding your calling is only the first stage. The next is to live it out. And that is coming next. But be warned, it'll go deeper, be even more honest, and hit even closer to the heart. Hang in there. Your legend is already on the horizon. So you've begun to feel that your purpose is closer than it seems. No longer out there in the maybe someday, but right here nearby. And that leads to a logical yet difficult question. What's next? How do you bring that purpose into reality? How do you not lose the thread, not dissolve into daily routines? How do you make sure your path leaves a mark, not just scars from effort? I once stood before the same question. My mentor, Mr. Schaff, told me one thing back then. Jim, don't fear big goals. Fear small efforts. And I realized fulfilling your calling doesn't require guarantees. It requires a choice and discipline. Because a dream without action is just a wish. But a dream with action, that's a strategy. Friend, let me be honest with you. Living your purpose will be harder than finding it. Because realizing who you want to be, that's awakening. But becoming who you want to be, that's a daily battle. With laziness, with procrastination, with doubt. And most of all, with the old versions of yourself that constantly whisper, what if it doesn't work out? But here's the paradox. Your fear is proof you're on the right track. Because when you're doing something real, something meaningful, you'll always feel a little scared. And that's a good thing. It means you're alive. It means you're moving. I remember when I was first invited to speak in front of a large audience. I wasn't ready. My voice trembled. I was mad at myself. But inside there was this feeling, I need to say this. Because when you carry something valuable, it doesn't matter how old you are, whether you have titles or approval. What matters is whether you have the fire. And here's what I'll tell you now. Don't be afraid to start small. I started with rooms of 20 people. Now millions have listened to me, but I never chased numbers. I chased impact. And every one of us, including you, has the ability to create impact. If only you step out of your comfort zone. Let me ask, when was the last time you did something scary but important? When was the last time you went not where it was easy, but where it was needed? Because fulfilled purpose is always a journey through the difficult. But there, in the dark forest of growth, you meet your true self. Here's another principle that saved me. Work not for applause, but for transformation. Many people want to be influential. Few want to become worthy of influence. And that's where the real work begins. You don't just have to say the right things, you have to become the person who lives them. Don't look for the path to the stage. Look for the path to strength, and then the stage will find you. You might say, but I don't have an audience, I don't have support, I don't have resources. My answer, your purpose doesn't need perfect conditions. It needs a perfect start, the kind that begins within. I was once a farm kid in Idaho. No education, no influence, no money, but I started, and I didn't stop. Friend, you have no idea what one discipline multiplied over time can do. One ordinary day, if you begin to invest a piece of your purpose in it, one journal entry, one phone call, one rejection of an excuse, and everything begins to change. Because, as I said, for things to change, you have to change. And once you change, your entire world begins to adjust to the new version of you. I've seen it hundreds of times. People who didn't change their job, their family, or their country, but changed themselves, and eventually reached a level where they no longer had to look for opportunities, because they became the opportunity for others. Want to leave a mark? Then here's one more thought. Work deeper, not louder. Everyone today wants visibility, but real influence doesn't come through shouting. It comes through depth, through inner work, through those early mornings when you're learning, through those late nights when you don't give up, through those conversations when you don't play a role but speak the truth. Because you won't leave a mark by impressing someone. You'll leave a mark by helping someone see themselves better, by making your presence a catalyst for someone else's transformation. That's how I built my career, not on speeches, but on actions that elevated others to a new level. And finally, remember, your calling is not fulfilled for the sake of fame, but for the peace in your soul. Because the deepest joy is not in having, it's in giving what's inside you. You don't yet know how many souls are waiting for you, for your word, for your action, for your example. Not because you're better, but because you're ready to be honest, to be yourself, and to go all the way. And you know what? This isn't the end. Because fulfillment, that's not the summit. There's a third level. And there we'll talk about what remains after you, about legacy, about influence, about legend. But for now, just reflect on this. What within me today is maturing so it can become my contribution to this world tomorrow? And here we are at the highest level, the moment when you stop asking, what can I get? And begin asking, what can I leave behind? This is the final turn in the journey of purpose. You can discover yourself, you can fulfill your mission, but if all of it disappears with you, did you truly live? What we call a personal legend is not just about achieving goals. It's about what lives on after you. It's the impact that doesn't fade when you leave the stage. It's the words repeated by generations. It's the stories that inspire even those who've never seen you in person. And I'm here to tell you, you can leave a legacy. Yes, you. No matter your age, what's in your wallet, or your education. Legacy isn't about status. It's about choice. When I first stepped on stage with my own program, I didn't aim to be legendary. I just wanted to share what had saved me. But over the years, I realized every word spoken, every piece of advice, every simple phrase, it's either a brick for a bridge or a stone in someone's path. You either lift or lower. So I made a choice to work in a way that my words would outlive me. Ask yourself right now, what will I leave behind? And even deeper, who will others become because I was in their life? Because you see, your mark is not in the deals you closed, not in the applause, not in the perfect photos. It's in how others changed after crossing paths with you. Your legend isn't about you, it's about them, and about how you became the key to their doors. People often ask me, Jim, when did you know you were successful? I always answered, when people started writing to me, because of you, I didn't give up. That is true success, when your story becomes fuel for someone else's new beginning. But there's one more thing, and it may be the most important. To leave a mark, you must be present, fully, completely. Without masks, people don't remember your words. They remember how they felt around you. And if they felt belief, they'll ignite. If they felt inspiration, they'll grow. If they felt silence and depth, they'll start listening to themselves. Want to leave a legacy? Here's how. Be the example, not on Monday, not when it's convenient, but right now, in your habits, in your principles, in your precision, in your words, in how you speak to others, in how you keep your word because others are watching. And someone will say, I want to live with that kind of integrity. Once after a talk, a man told me, Mr. Rohn, I didn't hear loud phrases from you. I felt a silence that inspires. And that was the highest compliment, because silence is not the absence of words. It's the depth of meaning. It's when your life becomes a silent sermon. And that's when you leave a real mark. And you know what else? That mark begins with simple things, with you no longer devaluing yourself. No longer waiting for others to confirm your worth. No longer shrinking your dream to fit someone else's expectations. It starts with you sitting down with your journal again and writing, today I choose again to truly live, not to survive, not to adapt, but to burn. Because your legend is not an event, it's a process, a way of being, and it doesn't start in the future. It starts with what you do right now. But here's the twist. Legacy isn't only what you leave for others, it's what you leave for yourself. The whole journey, all the victories and falls, every little step, they leave a trace. And someday when you sit in silence at the sunset of life and look back, it will matter that you can say, I didn't just live, I left the world better than I found it. And this, my friend, is what we're moving toward. To a place where you no longer have to prove, or rush, or compete, because you know you've left a legend, and that is enough. Now pause, truly pause. And ask yourself the ultimate question, what will I begin doing today to make my life worthy of being remembered? Because in the next practical section, we'll move to action. Not theory, not slogans, but tools to help you take your first steps now. But before we go there, let me remind you once more, your personal legend begins with a choice. And that choice is always now. Now it's your time. Ready for the practice? And now it's your turn to act. You've listened up to this point, which means something inside you stirred. And that's no accident. It's a call to action. I've always said information is potential, but transformation is a decision. Friend, right now we're not just talking, we're activating a mechanism of change. And change begins with honesty, not with perfection, not with slogans, but with a quiet, honest inner yes or no. I'm offering you a simple practice, 5 questions, each one helping you see where you are on your path. Rate each on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 means not at all and 10 means absolutely yes. Don't overthink. Answer with your heart. You can come back later and write your answers in a journal, but for now, just feel. First question, how deeply do I know who I truly am beyond roles, expectations, and external achievements? Imagine all the labels, titles, and outward attributes stripped away. Who remains? That's the foundation of your legend. Without it, you're building a house with no base. Second question, how much am I living in alignment with my inner calling today, not just drifting with the current? Think, is your day a reaction or a choice? Do you wake with intent, or do you hit snooze and let life pull you? Legends don't drift, they steer the sails. Third question, how consistent am I in my actions even when I don't see immediate results? Are you planting seeds daily or throwing down the shovel if there's no harvest in a week? Remember, an oak doesn't grow overnight, but someone has to plant the acorn. Fourth question, how much are my actions today creating value for others, not tomorrow, not someday, but right now? A legend is always about impact, not grandiose, but practical. Is there something in your day that makes life better for someone else, even a little? Fifth question, if I keep living exactly as I am now, will I leave a mark or just wear down a path of habit? Imagine 5 more years of life just like today. What will come of it? This is your truest mirror. Look into it. Don't look away. How does it feel? Don't rush to conclusions. Maybe you felt pride in some answers. Hold on to that. Maybe some made you uncomfortable. Don't run. Discomfort is your growth point. That's where the new you begins. I urge you, after this video, sit for a few minutes. Write down your answers, not in your head on paper, because thoughts are like clouds, but words on paper are like seeds. And one more thing. If something in this video touched you, don't keep it inside. Share it in the comments. Write down which thought was a turning point. Which question made you pause? This isn't just interaction. This is the uncovering of your inner voice. Hit like if this video brought you value. Subscribe if you want to hear more that's deeper, more honest, more of what helps you live, not just exist. So my friend, your life isn't a rough draft. It's already the final version. And every day is either a stroke added to your legend or another compromise. But remember, even if you've spent years in the dark, the light is still waiting for your move. And one decisive action today can change everything. I've always said, work harder on yourself than on anything else, because you are the main asset, and your story could become the fire for someone still living in the ashes. So go, without fear, without permission, without delay. Go to discover, to fulfill, and to leave behind, because your purpose doesn't ask, it calls. And life is waiting to hear your voice.